Hey everybody, let's build some Exchange Online DLP policies today, and let's look at some advanced options that we have and we might want to take advantage of, right? So if you're sending an email, you might have some different controls that you want to use than if you're sharing a SharePoint file. So let's walk through some of those various cool options we can do, like encryption or sending to a manager for approval. Let's demo them and see how you might want to take advantage of them in your environment. All right, so here we are in Compliance Center, and let's go ahead and build out our Exchange Online DLP policy. So in this case, I'm going to start with a custom template because we kind of know what we want to design and the data pieces that we want to do. These are obviously great templates if you're not sure what you might be interested in from like a sensitive info type perspective. But since we're pretty sure about it, we're good to go. We're going to build a custom policy and then start designing some of our advanced options. So I'm going to target this one and call this the Exchange Online DLP policy for our corporation. And let's get it up and running. So first thing you want to do when you're building a specific workload policy is disable all of these other locations as a workload. When you turn off all of these other options in the specific workload you're trying to put a policy around, you're going to get a lot more capabilities. And so this is going to really let us take advantage of that advanced options that we want to use inside of Exchange. For testing purposes, you may want to scope this and only be your account or a demo user account or a group. So just realize if you're doing this in production, you may want to really scope this appropriately before, rolling this out. Let's go and create our policy. And I'm going to follow the same schema that I did for my monitor only policies. I'm going to do two sets of rules, a low volume and a high volume, and begin setting those up. So we're going to give it a name. So again, our low volume policy in this case. Yep. And we're going to add our conditions. So content is shared from 365 to people outside my org. It's the first one we always do, or usually will do. And then content contains, this is again where we're going to add our sensitive info types to these items. So let's add these sensitive info types and we'll start targeting it. So I'm going to add in all of the standard US information types that might be of interest, as well as credit cards and ABA routing numbers, because we did our analysis. That's the most important information in our organization and the ones that normally get shared out. And there we go. We got them added in. I'm going to target and say for our low volume, that's anywhere between 1 and 5 instances of a credit card or any of these sensitive data being sent. So that's going to be, again, a document or an email that has 1 through 5 credit cards in it. That's considered low volume. Okay. And let's set up the first kind of components of this Exchange policy. So user notifications. This is, again, that education that's going to the end users. I really like having these on. I will typically customize these to meet our needs. So policy tip, this is going to be that in context of the email as they're typing it, they're going to get that policy tip. And so let's add in a couple of our standard verbiage here. So in this case, Microsoft has detected sensitive data in this and really just helping the end user make the right choice. Please take appropriate security precaution when sharing this outside of the organization, or remove the sensitive data from the message, right? So we're telling them, hey, this is your actions you should take. You might want to change this to say, take appropriate security. Please encrypt the email, right, as you're sending it. We're going to also customize the bounce back message. In this case, I'm going to program in some verbiage that I already have around here. And there we go. So in this case, what we're programming in is just some standard message information to our end users. And we're taking advantage of some of the newer features that we can do. So Microsoft has detected that your data contained sensitive info. We're going to program this in and say, no action was taken, Please try to limit external sharing of sensitive data. When necessary, please use encryption. All right, and then we're going to program in the issue, the content URL, all that kind of data for what caused the DLP hit so that the end user can know, oh, that's what I did. I sent this, right? Okay, so that's option one I really want you to take advantage of. Let's get some notifications going to the user. Now, one of the advanced features you can use in this case is this allow override and the submittal of a business justification, right? So you might want to get some feedback from your users about this policy. Oh, I need this to do this because it's XYZ, right? So that's an advanced option, right? You can get that information from them and require them to submit before sending this message, that kind of thing. In this monitor only mode, as you're currently stated, it might not be 100% right. There's not necessary. It's not going to actually block it at this stage, but it's a good capability to have here. Okay. All right, let's program in the advanced actions that we can do in this case. So one I really like to use, especially for a low volume one where maybe it's sensitive, maybe it's not, maybe we're not ready to block it, is this restrict and encrypt capability, right? So in this case, we're not saying, hey, I'm not ready maybe necessarily to block at, one credit card from sending out. Maybe I'm not ready to block one ABA routing number, but I want to encrypt the message. And so built into your Exchange Online is Office Message Encryption, which is going to be these two really nice capabilities here. So when you mark this as encrypt, it will send your message to that customer or to that external party using OME, and that allows your message to be containerized in your own Exchange environment, and the end user will be sent a link, and then they will have to log into your environment to access that message. There's two capabilities here. I mean, there's a lot in this list. This is incorrect. There's some advanced capabilities you can do, but two that I really want to highlight for you that you should consider or test out. So this encrypt one is just the standard. It's sent through an encrypted portal. The end user accesses it, downloads it, they're good to go. This do not forward option allows the end user to interact with the message, read it, but they can't do anything from it. They can't download the files, they can't copy and paste from it. It just lets them view things in this portal and not do anything else, right? So that might be a cool option you can take advantage of. And for our low volume policy, we're going to use this encrypt capability and have this come through in here. Okay, so that's programmed in now, and this is good for our low volume one. I think this is all the features I want to take advantage of currently. Again, I'm going to log this as a security incident though, and so we'll mark this so I have good reporting on it. Okay, and we're going to save that. And next, we're going to build out our high volume policies and build out some maybe some different options here. So again, program this in. Content is shared from 365. Again, matching our existing policies that we've tested. Make sure our data definitions are good. Content contains. Again, we're going to program in the sensitive info types and just match it to our low volume. So in that case, this was U.S. bank account, U.S. passport, U.S. driver's license, ITIN, physical. We're not going to do physical address. That's a little too noisy on that one. And then credit cards. And that should be good. Again, high volume in our case, we're saying that's 1 through 5, right? Or low volume, we're saying is 1 through 5. High volume in this case is going to be 6 and up. You might want to build out like a medium volume one, right? Depends on kind of your needs there. So I'm going to program this in real quick. And then let's talk about the wrong number. Let's talk about what we're going to do for our high volume policies, how we're going to treat it a little separately. Okay. All right. So here we go. Let's add in all of the same type of stuff that we did before, and I'll kind of speed through this so we don't have to see this again. All right, so we've got new user notifications going to them. And let's program in the action that we wanted to do in this case to for a high volume policy. All right, so the one I like to do in this case is I'm going to block people from outside the organization from accessing this email. So again, in this case, 6 through 10 credit cards are sent accidentally in an email. We're going to block by default for that type of stuff, right? It might be a business process, but at this point, I am just going to come in and say, U.S. Social Security number, it's being sent out. That's a lot of data. You know, it's beyond maybe your family that you're using your corporate stuff for. Let's put a little bit more security controls around that. Let's block that. So block everybody outside the org. If you're emailing it inside the org, you're sending it to a coworker for, you know, hey, can you process this? Can you update this, you know, credit card into our system, our finance team, right? That's okay. That's fine. It happened. It's a business process. We have to do some of those things, but it's flowing out. We want to block it, right? So that's kind of option one that we're going to program in here. Some of the things that you may want to consider when you're designing this is, what are your trusted partners? So as an exception policy, I might come in and look at the recipient domain and say, okay, we work with, you know, Wingtip Toys a lot. So I'm going to program in, if the message is going to wingtips, .com, we're going to add that as an exception, right? Because maybe that's a trusted partner, right? And so you should think about some of these exception policies as you're designing your block policies. You want to take advantage of that learning from our education mode, right? And then apply it as you're doing your next steps, right? So I found out from, the other monitoring that we were doing that, hey, this is our trusted partner. We send a lot of ABA routing numbers or a lot of social security numbers to them. We need to not break that business process, right? And so let's add an exception in here. It'll still be logged, but we're not going to do the action of blocking that sending in this case. Right, so those are some of those capabilities here. Again, you can do your exception policies based on all sorts of different capabilities here. So maybe your exception that you're going to do is if the subject matches this pattern, right? Maybe you're going to tell end users, if you need to send this, put in the subject this keyword, and it will come in and allow it to be sent, right? And so, those are some of those capabilities here, right? So like if, like one example is like maybe you're just going to add approved to the subject line or bracket approved. And then that means to the system or to your end users that this is something that's justified that to be sent out. And so you can program that in. I'm not going to take advantage of this for this policy right now. I'll show you how I think you should consider or demo using it, right? So again, in this case, high volume, 6 through 10 credit cards being sent out to people outside the organization. What are we going to do? We're going to block that from being sent. And again, we're educating the user and putting it in. Now, for your user overrides, maybe at this point you want to not do a user override. 6 through 10 maybe is, there's no excuse for that in your org. Maybe 6 through 10 is that gray area where you'd want to program that in and have maybe an exception. We can allow a business override in this case if we want, or we cannot. So maybe for you, you're not going to do the override, but I'm going to show you kind of a cool option that you can do with Exchange that maybe will have another second option. Take a look at this. So I'm going to program in this override, and we're going to set up the rest of this. Okay. And that looks good. We're going to go ahead and save that policy. All right, so we got two policies again in this case. Low volume policy where we're going to do the action, notify the user, encrypt the message, and send an alert to admins. For the high volume policy, we're going to block except for that trusted organization, and we're going to restrict that external user from accessing it. Now, again, I allowed an override for this. That might be, you might be sitting there saying, hey, we definitely don't want to do that. But the reason why I did this one is because I want to build kind of the cool, kind of another override capability. So let's go ahead and show you how you can maybe get a departmental approval or a manager approval for this scenario here where it's being sent out with encryption. or when the end user needs to override this capability. So I gave that end user the override. Let's add another step in that process of manager approval. All right. So in Exchange, we have this option here, right? So I talked about advanced options. Has sender overridden the policy tip? This is that capability that I want to use. So, when the end user, again, they're sending this credit card 6 through 10, and we normally would block it, but the end user hit the override capability. Well, we can target that as a specific action. And since it's following the principle of like low volume, high volume, and then the override, this will hit after the end user does your override. And so in this case, I'm going to target anytime someone does an override of a policy tip, and then come here and program in an action. In this case, I'm going to redirect the message to a specific user for approval, right? So for the message to specific approvers, we could also target the employee's manager. If you keep Active Directory up to date or Azure AD up to date with manager filled out, this might be a good option for you, right? You can program in and say, hey, just send this to the manager. They hit approve, the message sends out, right? Oh, you need to share out your home credit card information. You're sending out, maybe it's a family of 6, tax returns or something like that, or medical records or something like that, and you need to send it out. Boom, you can program that in, manager approves it, it's sent, right? Maybe for you, that's not working. We can actually target this and say, hey, maybe this needs to go to the data release team or the compliance team before this is approved. So we'll say forward the message to specific approvers, and we're going to program that in. So in this case, I'm going to send this to my admin account for approval, just so we can have this up and running in this case. And then after that, we are good to go. So I'm going to log this as a medium incident for this case when this alert happens. And that's it, right? We're good to go. All right. So I'm going to save this and let's test this policy to see what it does and make sure that we're triggering it right and see some of these advanced options in action. All right, so I've waited long enough for my policy to synchronize and it is available for use. Please note that there is obviously, with any Microsoft thing, can be a long sync time for your policy to go through and start affecting things, right? Turning it on also as turning it off, right? So you really want to scope it and again, test it with a small group before you go to production. But let's see how it looks. Let's see how the policy affects our demo user as we're building it out. All right, so we're going to declare an email and I'm going to type in my external user, in this case, my external tenant ID. And I'm going to program in some of this information in that I already have kind of pre-plumbed. And so end user, as they're typing their email, they can start putting this info in, and eventually the DLP policy tip, as they're writing it, will detect and it will show up here, right? Right now I'm only seeing that remove recipient, like it's just notifying them, hey, you hit tab complete, maybe it's not a user in the org. And now it just updated to say, okay, this is our DLP policy tip. So again, Microsoft detected sensitive data in this message. Please take appropriate precautions, yada, 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 show details. And that's kind of our option there, right? And so I can hit send on this. And again, in this type, right, that low volume one, we weren't blocking it. We're just forcing it with encryption to be sent, right? And so here we can see the end user is being notified, Contoso, yada, yada, no action was taken. And so one thing that we might want to adjust is the verbiage here, right? Actually, it's not no action was taken. We actually sent it, but we sent it with encryption. So we might want to adjust our verbiage that we programmed in and say, actually, this is XYZ sent with encryption. If you want to send a link of how to unencrypt a message to your customer, we might add in like directions or something like that, right? To make it easier for them. Now with another type of email, again, with a lot of sensitive data for our high volume policy, we had a different set of rules, right? Again, policy tip pops up for the end user. They can hit show detail. If they try to send, right, they're getting that block message, which is the scenario that we really wanted. However, again, maybe our verbiage in here isn't correct. And then we did give them that override capability. So let's go put that in, and we'll put our business justification in. You will notice that if you're using the override with the policy tip, you do kind of have to wait for the policy tip to hit and allow it to come through. Otherwise, you might need to program in some exception policies or something like that for your end users of like how to get over this if you're going to allow it. Right? This is a lot of data to send over email. I might not allow that out from the org. Okay. So let's fill out our business justification. How to share it to the credit card company, and we'll hit override. And then now that we hit override, now we can send the message out of the org and come through. Cool. So that's kind of the end user experience. What does it look like again from your perspective, especially with this one that we programmed in that secondary manager approval? Let's go take a look at the manager email or that approver email. And this is kind of that scenario where we did that override. In this case, if maybe you would consider this a hold release queue, right? It's going to go to this mailbox, and then as the sender, I'm going to be, or the approver, I'm going to be given the option of approve or reject. And so if I want to hit reject, I can, put in a notice, or I can, say, hey, this isn't allowed or whatnot, and then have this be that secondary catch-all before, again, a high sensitive info is sent out from the org, send it or allow it, whatnot. In this case, I looked at their, message, and I talked to them, and now I'm going to hit approve, right? And send that through. Now, one thing you will notice if you start using this is that the information that we filled out did not come through to us. So that's kind of one weakness with this kind of hold release stuff. It's going to the business justification is going to the admin center. And so we can see that justification in our admin center, but we can't see it in this approve or deny kind of option here. Again, and also we're going to, put a reject in this scenario. And send that over to them and reject that message. Okay. So there's that option. So hopefully that helps someone out there and kind of shows some of those capabilities of how you can build some, exchange specific policies and rules and take advantage of some of those features. Have a good one, and let me know what video you want to see next.